Good evening, everyone. This is Rakesh CK, your host, and a warm welcome to our webinar, The Role of IAM in Regulatory Compliance. We have with us our two panelists, Suresh Maniam and Prachi Nathani. Thanks for accepting our invite. Suresh Maniam, Associate Director, CRSG Cotelligent. Suresh is a seasoned identity and access management expert with 14 years of experience in cybersecurity, IAM product development, and multi-vendor IAM implementations. He leads Cotelligent India's IAM practice, driving strategy and execution in IAM solutions. He has worked with clients across financial services, healthcare, and global enterprises, helping them design and implement scalable and secure identity solutions. With deep expertise in IAM's architecture and strategy, Suresh specializes in developing security-driven IAM roadmap, conducting assessments and advisory services, and leading implementations, migrations, and operations. His work enables organizations to enhance security, ensure compliance, and optimize access management efficiency. Welcome to the webinar, Suresh. Next is Prachi. Prachi is a Senior Advisory Manager, CRSG Cotelligent. Prachi is a seasoned privilege session management subject matter expert with 12 years of comprehensive expertise in the cybersecurity domain. Her expertise is centered around delivering high-impact PAM engagements. She has successfully led multiple projects, ensuring robust security frameworks for privilege access and contributing to the resilience of enterprise security infrastructures. Welcome to the webinar. Over to you.
Hey, thanks, Rakesh. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. Prachi, can you share the screen? Yeah, again, good afternoon, guys. Thanks for joining. So today our session is about on the role of IAM in regulatory compliance. So we'll have the quickly, we'll go through the agenda and we'll move on to the actual stuff. Next slide, Prachi. Yeah, so first we'll go through about the understanding about IAM. So we know that everyone is aware of what is IAM. So, but again, quick recap. So there is some again internally briefing between the identity and access management side, the other components, PAM, and the other areas, and also moving on the next one on the regulatory compliance and what are the key global regulatory compliance, and then the India specific, and also the breakdown of each of these controls or the frameworks, and also the common challenges, strategies, roadmap, case studies. So this is the agenda for the today's session. Let's jump onto the first slide, Prachi. Yeah. So again, IAM side, identity and access management, as many of you much aware of exactly what is IAM. It's again the recap perspective, the framework of policies, technologies, and the process, and making sure that everyone has a right access at a right time. It's not like in the access is not for right people having a right access at a right time, and also it's essentially for your organizational digital asset safeguarding, and also access validations, governance perspective, and the operational efficiency perspective, and also to reduce your risk, and it is going to help down in mitigating your risk. And what exactly in the what exactly there inside the identity and access management. So for here the understanding purpose, we have divided into four separate core modules kind of thing: identity governance, CIAM, WAM, and the PAM. So workforce and is the customer force, both are different, so you need to pick that particular word. So in under workforce, you have the identity governance and the access management and the PAM. In the customer force, wherein you have only the end customers or a partners kind of thing, vendors kind of thing. In the workforce, you will have only the full-time employees and non-employees, contractors kind of thing. So inside IGA, exactly, you are going to have the central, which is going to play the key role for these all these compliances perspective. The reason there is it is going to give the centralized repository and also address your regular onboarding and offboarding requirements using the lifecycle management concept, and also the role-based access based on your departments or job codes. Those can be defined using the RBAC stuff, and also the self-service portal access request, and also the governance. All those falls under the main key component identity governance. Moving on to the access management side, the SSO and MFA is going to play the key role. So in this slides, the third component which we are talking, and also the PAM, this is especially for the IT admins and also the privileged users, who is regularly a developers kind of thing, engineers kind of thing, who ideally touches your servers, and where you wanted to have this session recording enabled and also monitor what exactly they are doing, since those are your critical applications, kind of end privileged management and a secret management. And all these falls under the PAM. In the customer force, wherein the customer is sitting at some other location or a vendor based vendors, you have the vendors, their partners, those kind of things, they wanted to access in any of the application, they will fall under the CIAM side, starting from registration perspective and just-in-time access and single sign-on MFA. All those falls under the CIAM side. So this is about the quick go through on IAM side. Next slide, Prachi. Yeah, next one, what exactly the regulatory compliance, why it is important here, why the compliance is critical for your organization, to make sure that ensure your organization meets legal, secure and trusted and operational standards and effectiveness, and also to protect your sensitive data and to restrict the unauthorized access, and also the reduce the security breaches and to avoid the penalties. So if you fail to complaint against whatever the framework it is applicable to your industry, obviously there is going to be a regulatory fines, and you need to face it legally as well. And also by having this regulatory compliance in place, it automatically promotes that you have a proper well-defined process is established in your current documentation or policies. You have and matured policies and process, I can say. It's also help you in a smooth business process, and also you are ready for any time for the audits. So when you don't have a proper process and a policies in place, obviously you're not ready for the audit. The reason is data is sitting at in different applications, but there is no central view, there is no process defined for you. So all these points plays a crucial role, critical for the compliance perspective. Next one, slide, next slide. The consequences for the non-regulatory and non-compliance, if you whatever we discussed in the previous slide, if you fail to meet those compliances, the first thing is penalty, the fines. We can see the example here. One is on the GDPR side, and also the annual and the Indian side digital personal data protection rules. So that has an feasibility to fine up to 200 crore INR, which is then huge amount if you fail to meet the compliance needs or compliance frameworks. And then more than money, obviously the trust and the goodwill among the customers and the partners, it is going to impact a lot. It is going to affect your business as well. The reputational damage is going to happen. And also due to these non-compliance, and it gives an open door for the cyber attacks due to the weak identity management and also lack of audit readiness. Whenever you have an audit, you don't have a proper data in place, you don't have a number of applications or policies or total users, there is no proper data. So all these falls under inconsistency. There is no data, no audit fruitfully it can complete on time. So those are the consequences which you can face when your regulatory is when you're not compliant, I can say. Moving on. Yeah, I'll hand over to Prachi to go through a couple of slides on the regulatory frameworks globally and also India, and further I'll take it up. Over to you, Prachi.
Thanks, Suresh. Thank you for covering the introduction and giving us an insight into identity and access management. So, this is a topic that sits right at the intersection of cybersecurity, compliance, and risk management. And it's becoming increasingly important as data privacy regulations tighten and cyber attacks become more sophisticated. We'll explore real regulations like GDPR, NIST, ISO 27001, SEBI, and more, and break down how they map into IAM and PAM controls. Let's jump in. The key regulatory global frameworks that are impacting IAM. Let's take a tour of some of the most prominent global frameworks. Each of these mandates access control in its own language, but they share the same objective: ensuring data is accessed only by authorized individuals and that such access is monitored and auditable. The GDPR, that is applicable for Europe, emphasizes data privacy and requires strong identity governance. For example, users have the right to know who accessed their data. Moving on to ISO. ISO 27001 is an international standard for managing information security. It includes entire sections dedicated to access control, covering everything from policy to user provisioning to session timeout. The SOX controls are applicable for USA. They focus on internal controls over financial reporting. For IT, that means strong IAM processes, logging of access, and separation of duties. Underlying all of these is a set of cybersecurity standards that's by NIST, that is again applicable to US, but it is used by federal agencies and often referenced by private enterprises. It includes detailed guidelines for user identification, authentication, and access enforcement. I'll cover each of these in detail in the next slides. Let's shift the focus to India. In recent years, India has stepped up its regulatory oversight of cybersecurity, particularly in finance and infrastructure. Here are the key players. SEBI, the Securities Exchange Board of India, issued a cybersecurity framework uh, for market intermediaries. It mandates access reviews, privileged user monitoring, and multi-factor authentication for critical systems. The Reserve Bank of India's guidelines on cybersecurity and IT governance require banks to implement robust access control, enforce role segregation, and ensure secure authentication for online banking platforms. India's National Incident Response Team, CERT, issues guidelines and directives on identity governance, incident handling, and system hardening. The IT Act, that was in 2000, India's foundational cybersecurity law, criminalizes unauthorized access and data breaches. It also holds organizations accountable for protecting data that they process. If you're operating in India, particularly in finance, your IAM strategy must align with these frameworks to stay compliant and protect against regulatory scrutiny. Let's take GDPR as our first deep dive. GDPR was designed to protect personal data and give individuals control over their digital identities. It has some clear implications for IAM. Article 5 outlines the core data protection principles that all processing activities must adhere to, including those involving access and identity. Article 25 talks about privacy by design and default. Article 32 talks about security of processing. And Article 33 talks about breach notification. If there's a data breach, organizations must notify the authorities within 72 hours. So, GDPR doesn't just affect marketing and data teams, it deeply influences how IT manages access and identities. NIST 853 is one of the most comprehensive cybersecurity control catalogs in the world. While it was originally developed for US federal agencies, many private companies use it as a gold standard. Here's how it covers IAM: identification and authentication, the IA family. I'm going to spend a little bit more time for NIST because it is very comprehensive, and I will cover the other ones briefly. So, talking about identification and authentication, the IA family. This includes assigning unique IDs to users, enforcing strong passwords, and using multi factor authentication for remote and privileged access. Access control, the AC family. This focuses on limiting access based on job roles. The concept of least privilege and ensuring users don't have permissions than more permissions than needed. Privileged role management, which comes under the access control family but has more implications. This control specifically addresses how organizations should manage elevated access. It calls for things like time bound privileges, audit trails, and approvals. Audit events, the audit family AU. Organizations must define and implement auditing for events related to user and privileged access, helping support traceability and incident response. There are other access controls that I would like to touch upon, which talks about role-based and least privileged access. These controls emphasize that access should always be on a need-to-know basis, and it should always be reviewed periodically. If your organization is looking to build a compliant IAM strategy, NIST offers a very granular roadmap. Let's look at ISO 27001, which is widely adopted across industries for information security management. It outlines a systematic approach to managing sensitive company information and includes a dedicated control domain. Annex 8.9 focused on access management. Here are the key control points. A91 Access Control Policy. Organizations must establish an access control policy that defines how users are granted access, under what conditions, and how that access is revoked. It talks about user access management, user responsibilities, system and application access control, logging and monitoring. Some of the articles are listed, some of the controls are listed here. ISO 27001 not only demands good IAM practices, it also mandates documentation, audit trails, and measurable enforcement. SOX, or the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, is critical for the organizations listed on the US stock exchanges. While its core focus is financial accountability, it has clear IT compliance requirements, especially around user access. User access reviews. SOX mandates that access to financial systems be tightly controlled. Periodic reviews must be conducted. Talking about separation of duties, this is a key principle where no single individual should control all phases of a financial transaction. For example, one person raises a PO, another approves it, and a third processes payment. IAM tools can enforce this through role mapping and SOD rule engines. Privileged access monitoring. Anyone with elevated access to financial system, like DBAs, admins, or developers, must have their actions logged and monitored. Change management controls. SOX requires that changes to financial systems, including access rights or configurations, are authorized, documented, and auditable to prevent unauthorized alterations. SOX shows us how IAM is more than an IT function. It is a financial and legal control. When it comes to healthcare, the Healthcare Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, sets the benchmark for data privacy and security in the United States. I'm not going to delve deep into this act. HIPAA is very clear. Access to sensitive patient data must be tightly governed, monitored, and reviewable. It talks about authentication and access controls, audit controls, workforce clearance procedures, security awareness, and training, which is an administrative safeguard. PCI-DSS applies to any organization that handles credit card data. Banks, retailers, processors, even e-commerce websites. IAM and PAM controls are woven into PCI-DSS framework, especially in the following areas. Requirement 7, restrict access to cardholder data. Requirement 8, identify and authenticate access. Requirement 10, track and monitor access. And the first one was requirement 3, protect stored cardholder data. PCI DSS compliance is tightly coupled with IAM maturity. Any misstep in access control can directly lead to audit failures and costly consequences. For those in the banking and finance sector, particularly in the US, the Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council FFIEC issues cybersecurity guidelines that touch heavily on IAM and PAM. Key expectations include user authentication, privileged account management, access monitoring and logging, periodic user access reviews. Think of FFIEC as a watchdog. During cybersecurity audits, if privileged access isn't logged or if access reviews aren't conducted regularly, financial institutions can face serious scrutiny. Now, this is a summary that tells you about all global regulatory frameworks and what are the basic articles that or the controls that they are recommending. And based on this, like Suresh talked about the introduction, IGA, privilege access management, and access management, you can decide which tool suits your organization the best, which are the controls that are applicable to you. Shifting back to India, SEBI's cybersecurity framework is very perspective about how entities like stock exchanges, depositories, and brokerage firms manage access. I'm going to delve deep into this. Access control for market infrastructure institutions. These institutions must implement RBAC and limit access to critical systems. It also talks about privileged user monitoring. All activity by privileged users must be logged, monitored, and reviewed periodically. SEBI expects real time alerts for any abnormal activity. Multi-factor authentication. It's required for remote access and admin level access, especially on systems that impact trading or clearing operations. Periodic access reviews. At least quarterly, firms must validate access rights and remove dormant or excessive privileges. There's also third party risk management. If access is granted to vendors or partners, their IAM controls must also align with SEBI's expectations. This includes contract clauses, SLAs, and shared audit responsibilities. Access deactivation is something that I touched upon earlier, but there's a specific article that calls this out. Firms must promptly revoke access for inactive or exited users to prevent unauthorized entry. SEBI's approach reflects a growing regulatory maturity in India, one that places identity security at the heart of market integrity. RBI. Next, we look at RBI, the Reserve Bank of India. RBI's IT and cybersecurity framework set the tone for banking and financial institutions in India. User access management in core banking systems. Banks must enforce strict access controls across CBS platforms. That's core banking systems. Every user action, especially those tied to customer data or transactions, should be logged and reviewed. There's access segregation. Elevated privileges must be tightly governed. No single admin should be able to bypass controls or disable security mechanisms. Dual control and maker checker principles are encouraged. This zero trust architecture. RBI is pushing banks towards adopting zero trust principles. This means every access request is continuously evaluated, no matter the user's location or role. Trust is never assumed. MFA for critical banking systems. Multi-factor authentication is mandated for accessing sensitive banking applications and privileged functions. RBI's guidelines reflect the high stakes in banking security, where even small lapses in access management can lead to fraud, data leakage, or operational disruptions. Let's now focus on CERTIN, India's Computer Emergency Response Team. It plays a crucial role in enhancing the country's cybersecurity resilience. CERTIN regularly publishes guidelines, advisories, and mandates for critical sectors, which include IAM and PAM considerations. Here are a few key directives. RBAC, or role based access control. Certain emphasizes that implementing RBAC in enterprise systems. This helps ensure only users only have access to the resources their roles require, reducing unnecessary exposure. Monitoring and incident response. Organizations must have mechanisms to detect unauthorized access attempts and respond promptly. That includes logging access attempts and generating alerts for suspicious behavior. Guidelines for critical sectors. Entities operating in telecom, energy, finance, and healthcare are subject to stricter IAM controls. Certain expects these organizations to proactively identify high risk roles and enforce privilege access restrictions. Incident logging and retention. Access and identity related events must be logged and retained for investigation and compliance audits. In essence, Certain is not just about responding to incidents. It's about building strong IAM PAM frameworks to prevent them in the first place. India's Information Technology Act of 2000 is the legal foundation for cybersecurity and data protection in the country. While it's a broad piece of legislation, several aspects are directly relevant to IAM. Talking about legal provisions on unauthorized access. This act classifies unauthorized access as a punishable offense. This makes technical controls like identity verification and session monitoring not just a good practice, but a legal obligation. Reasonable security practices. Section 43A mandates that organizations handling sensitive personal data must implement reasonable security practices. IAM tools play a key role here by managing who has access and tracking what they do. Service provider obligations. IT and cloud service providers must ensure their clients' data is secure. This means embedding access controls into services that they deliver. Prevent unauthorized access. Organizations must implement technical controls to block unauthorized access to sensitive systems and personal data. So, even though the IT Act doesn't spell out IAM or PAM or AM in technical terms, its principles clearly require organizations to manage and monitor access rigorously. Here's a summary of all the Indian acts that have all the Indian controls or frameworks that are in place. As we wrap up this discussion on regulatory frameworks, it's important to highlight a significant recent development in India, the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, DPDP. This came out in 2023. This act is India's first comprehensive law focused, sorry, it's the first comprehensive and law focused solely on digital personal data. It brings Indian privacy regulations closer to international benchmarks like GDPR and places a strong emphasis on individual rights and organizational accountability. I will quickly cover what it talks about in essence about access restriction, lawful and purpose specific access, logging and accountability, again coming to audit trails, comprehensive audit trails that can be accessed, incident response. So, in the event of a data breach, IAM logs should be available. DPDP is still evolving in terms of implementation rules, but one thing is clear: a mature IAM setup is a cornerstone for compliance. It not only protects individuals' data, but also builds trust and readiness in a privacy first digital economy. Now, let's talk about real world roadblocks. I'll hand over to Suresh to cover the challenges as to why do so many organizations struggle with IAM compliance.
Yeah,
Over to
thanks,
you,
Prachi.
Suresh.
Thanks, Prachi, for the detailed briefing of each control under the each compliance framework. So one of the person has attendee has the question on the ISO side, so we will take that in the Q&A side. Okay, so moving on to the common challenges while addressing these compliance requirements, or ideally they do face in the IAM side is I can say the first one is the fragmented IAM controls. Like there is no controls in process, there is no policies in process, or else like uneven, or it's not jointed properly, and due to lack of controls in the process, lengthy process for any of the access provisioning, and there is no documentation, there is nothing available all the time. They will go for manual tasks, and that will not defined in a processed way. And lack of these things, like they obviously they fail all the time to meet the compliance requirements, whatever has been mentioned in the previous slides, right? On the each of the compliance framework has some sort of requirements. They are falling under they're not meeting these compliant requirements. And one thing everywhere is lack of visibility. You have a number of applications and number of users, but you don't have a single point of place to view and a process defined where all data can be sitting in one place, a central repository kind of thing. It was not there. So when you have a proper IAM process and a framework and policies available, so these are the common challenges which can be easily addressed. These are the basic common challenges. This is not only the challenges, a lot to implement, a lot to achieve to strengthen your security. But these are the foundational or basic challenges which we can see. Next slide, Prachi. Yeah, and some of the strategies, just we'd like to talk it up here, and to enhance your security posture and also the mitigate risks. So this is here, it's the using these strategies is applicable for specifically for IAM automation tools, not for the manual process. Definitely it requires some tool wherein it requires integration to the SIM tools for central alerting and monitoring and troubleshooting, those kind of things. SIM plays a key role. And also to provide the access dynamically based on the device location, job code, title, and the risk score, R-based, role-based access or attribute-based access. And also for AML, which is common across everywhere, we are hearing that anomaly detections, helping for anomaly detections, and also for rogue accounts or orphan accounts, and also helping towards the access reviews in to make the IAM more robust and use these IAM features effectively, and to reduce your effort, the team effort. AML is going to play a key role. So when you're choosing an IAM solution, you make sure that is IAM, um, uh, AI and machine learning is part of the IAM, that tool which is supporting all the major modules, and also the um, zero trust architecture, least privilege access, and consolidating your access, and regularly validating the identity access. That plays a key role, and which is again review process itself, and make sure that person has at least privilege access rather than having a default access kind of thing. Next slide, Prachi. And the common best practices we can recommend is, if you look at the previous regulatories which Prasi has mentioned, the most common things you might have seen is RBAC and access reviews and MFA. These are the common things. So role-based access, again, the statements are getting repeated here. Based on your or a user role, department, job code, or role-based access can be defined, and also just-in-time access for a specific time period, for a 5 minutes or a 10 days or in 1 week, as the business needed. Not the access means assigning the access forever is different, and assigning a time-bound access is a different. That's where JET plays a key role. And also the MFA we see everywhere to secure the user identity, and there is no unauthorized access kind of thing. And the review process and certifications plays a key role in the governance perspective. You can have the process in place, a quarterly or an half yearly or yearly, or else on change, either it is a manager change, either it is on a mover scenario kind of thing, a promotion kind of scenario. So those are the common things. For all these things, a proper process and the well-defined policy should be in place for the best practices, as part of the best practices of IAM. Next slide. And especially for the simplifying compliance, again, few of the statements are repeating here. The first common thing is you should have a proper assessment done in your current infrastructure, in the current IAM ecosystem, and maintain the proper policy. Documentation has to be maintained. Then you should have, either it is a manual process or an automated process, you should have some central view kind of thing, how many users you have, what kind of accesses they have, which helps for you to review, and you can validate the entire access. That's where the centralized governance system should in place. And then once you have that, it helps down for the to automate that compliance review, access validations, reporting kind of thing. And the most common thing, like the across all these regulatory frameworks, is training to the staff. So awareness kind of thing about these IAM and the cybersecurity awareness, that is very much important. The regular training towards to the identities, to the employees, has to be planned, and it should be executed. Next slide, Prachi. Yeah, so this is a high level roadmap. This is applicable to a greenfield IAM implementation. Let's say you don't have an IAM in place, or else you have a manual process. You need to assess what is your current state. You have in some automated process or a manual process. If you have in some manual process, something you can identify the current gaps. Due diligence has to be performed, and define your policies, and define your IAM strategy, and prioritize whether it is in governance requirements or access management requirements or privileged users requirements, and define and identify the required tools for it, is in one tool or a multi-tool, and then have your solution in place, and then integrate with the HR, your trusted system, and how that the user lifecycle management process initiated in a level 2, and then moving on to the level 3, automate what you have currently on the manual process perspective. Auto deprovisioning or auto offboarding plays a key role, removing the access on time and assigning the access on time without any delay, without any manual interruption, and then have the SSO and MFA in place, and roll out the credential management and the session monitoring tools, which helps for especially for the privileged users, and then stabilize your current IAM system, and then improvise towards the governance side, and conduct regular access reviews, and move into the advanced governance, segregation of duties, and also integrate with ITSM. We have seen in logging and the history plays a key role as part of these regulatory compliances. So for that, ITSM plays a key role, and also have the adaptive MFA and fine tune your MFA policies. And moving on next to the advanced stage. Once you reach to that advanced stage, like you have the CI/CD pipeline, you can have that automation process for the deployments perspective, and also continuous monitoring towards the privileged access, what exactly they are doing, have the recordings, and it's a continuous process, maintaining your access review campaigns regularly on time, and based on your business needs or your business strategies. Either it could in the down the line, you might have an mergers, acquisitions kind of thing, or else new regulatories in place, new controls you have defined. According to that, make sure that your IAM framework is updated, whether it is a manual or automated. If you have something in tool in place, you need to assess that, and you need to evaluate what is the score, what is the level you falls under here. Let's say you have an IGA solution, you have an access management solution, you need to assess and find that whether you're falling under level 3 or level 2. And you're falling under level 3, and how do you achieve that level 4 and a level 5? How to align to the business requirements? And all the time people might focus on the business requirements. In aligning to the business requirements, you need to make sure that you are compliant against the regulatories which is applicable to your industry and your organization. Next slide, Prachi. Yeah, now coming to the conclusion, some of the points we covered. The first thing, you should have a clear understanding and go through thorough analysis on the regulatory frameworks, whether it is US based or else like European based or India based, according to the local government and also your organization and industry. Those frameworks is going to be changed. You need to make sure that which frameworks are applicable to you, and also you need to evaluate if you have an existing IAM process, whether it is a manual or automated, a tool based, right? So all those policies has to be process has to be reviewed, and then if you feel that that is not up to the mark and you are falling under level 2, level 3, it is not up to the mark, right? So then you have to tailor your current policies, and a defined well matured policies has to be defined in aligning to the requirements of these regulatory requirements which is applicable to your organization. And then you need to perform a cost benefit analysis, and then have any additional tool is required, or current process is sufficient, or current tool is sufficient, or else any migration is required, whether the tools is supporting all your regulatory requirements or business requirements, or that level of analysis cost. Obviously, the cost is also matters. That cost benefit analysis is required when you wanted to procure a new tools. And sometimes, like, you might have an existing tools. Many of the persons as might not aware of that. What is exactly the tool capabilities? The best example here is seen is Azure Active Directory and Microsoft, which is Microsoft Entra. So most of the organizations use for an the as an mailbox Outlook purpose, but it supports the access management requirements also. So just upgrading your license, you should able to achieve that access management needs and requirements. And also it has the IGA and the PAM, but those are very limited. So reviewing your existing tools within your organization, and also assess with your the upcoming business requirements, and the whether it is meeting the compliance requirements, also that also plays a key role, and making you further define easily on the roadmap perspective or the strategy perspective. I think that's all we have. Next, we have a couple of case studies we have. So one of the real world PAM case study. So this is one of the leak, and I believe it, and a decade back, a former a contractor has an privileged access, and he moved out of organization, but the access has been not removed on time. So which led him, like, and he downloaded and leaked the confidential NSA data. And this example or the root cause is clearly says that lack of monitoring and the recording for the privileged users, and without removing on time and not monitoring caused this issue. So this clearly shows that the PAM plays a key role. Recording is very much important, and time-bound access, just-in-time access, behavioral analytics, all those things plays a key role for securing your infrastructure and your ecosystem and the tools you have. So due to this, there is a lot of change has been take place towards the US regulatory frameworks. They have amended a lot post this incident. Next, I think we have one more case study. Yeah, another case study. Again, it's similar, not similar exactly, but this is a financial institution. So they ended with an paying a lot of amount as as a fine, and this also shows that they don't have a proper access reviews in place, and they don't follow this least privileged access concept, and that is resulted for them a lot of reputational damage has been done, and also they had to pay back to the government as a fine, right? So this shows that IAM plays a key role, and a robust IAM governance should in place to achieve your business requirements and also the compliance needs. I think we are on time for Q&A. I think we are done with the slides. Prachi, anything we have?
Suresh, thank you. We are open for Q&A. The first question was about challenges. I think we have covered that. Do we have any? Do we want to cover any more challenges?
No, I think just those are the common things we have. So, I mean, covering that, when you go for an advanced stage of an IAM, definitely the implementing the IAM side, it varies the number of legacy applications you have and the ecosystem or infrastructure you have. The most common thing is integrating that with the applications. It varies organization to organization and the application to application you have. But with a proper planning and a strategy, all those things can be achieved.
Another question that we have is for ISO. So I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll just move the deck to ISO. And because it was international and we were focusing not on the global ones, we were focusing on the India standards. That is why we did not delve deep into this. But like I said, it is widely adopted across industries for information security management. Talks about ISMS, and it outlines a systematic approach to managing sensitive company information and includes a dedicated control domain, that is Annex 8.9, which you can see the controls under. And this is focused on access management. So the first one is 9.1, that is organizations must establish an access control policy that defines how users are granted access, under what conditions, and how that access is revoked. So it is basically a foundation for any compliant IAM setup that Suresh talked about, the entire roadmap. Um, it also talks about user access management. This covers the entire user lifecycle, onboarding, modifying access, offboarding. It emphasizes approval workflows, periodic reviews, and revoking access promptly when no longer needed. The next article talks about system application access control. This includes restriction on access to information and applications based on roles, time, or risk. For example, limiting access to production systems after business hours unless explicitly approved. So you can have those restrictions in place. Then the next section talks about logging and monitoring. It ensures that user activities, exceptions, and security events are recorded and regularly reviewed. It supports accountability and it can help to detect unauthorized access. So, in summary, it does not just demand good IAM practices, it also mandates documentation, audit trails, and measurable enforcement. Is there anything else that you would like me to cover?
No, I think there is another question by
About
Bhuganesh. It's about anything about DORA, or what's the impact of that on IAM, DORA.
we've covered very high level. Yes, Dora has the impacts, so we can get back to you on this.
So it also
Yeah,
includes
yeah.
incident reporting and kind of resilience testing. So I feel like it's not much into the IAM side. So the IAM side, it's not going to impact much as of now. So if they come up with another additional amendments, we need to see down the line.
Okay, I think we have that much questions only.
Yeah, one more
Yeah.
just advanced topics they have mentioned. I'm not sure at what slide they have talking about advanced things. Few things we have touched base. And the reason is few are like we have seen most of the few of the organizations are in very early stage of and defining these IAM things, and one of the reason is like see for us it's kind of few things has to good to have and few things are required, but when we look at the other regions, US or European regions, everything the global level frameworks which we have discussed, those are like kind of mandatory kind of thing. But in India, like they have defined, but they are not completely enforcing it. So, to the benefit of our audience perspective, we had come with a basic to high level and moderate things, not too much of advanced topics we have not covered here.
Thank you, Suresh. Thank you, Prachi. We don't have any questions in here. Thanks everyone for attending the session. Okay, we have one more question, I guess. It is from Zahir. What is compromised service accounts?
So can you repeat, Rakesh, what is compromise?
What is compromised service accounts?
Okay. Mm. So ideally, the service accounts, right? So who has these manage your critical applications, either it could be Active Directory or some other applications, right? So in order to um, integrate those applications to any of the tools, ideally the service accounts will be created on demand basis. Um, Probably if you're talking about compromising of those service accounts, here IAM also plays a key role managing of those service accounts. So it has to be integrated with IAM, and those service accounts has to be decommissioned as and when there is no need, or else who is the owner of that service account if the person is moving outside of the organizations. Managing service accounts is also plays a key role. So when you say the compromise, probably um, the person is moving out, or else they have shared the credentials to the other person, unauthorized persons, such kind of things. And for that reason, these service accounts can be implemented the credential rotation also, so that such things should not take place. To avoid this compromise of service accounts, it has to be properly managed and credential rotation has to be implemented. And I see one of the question, what is the tool you suggest to implement? So it again, it depends on your exact roadmap requirements and your strategy. Whether you have all three requirements like identity governance, access management, privileged one. Do you have an together as an one solution you are looking, or a three solutions? So it all plays around between your business roadmap, what exactly you're having, and type of applications, and you have your based on your current ecosystem and infrastructure you have. So all that comes into picture when it comes to the choosing the tool. So before choosing the tool, exactly it has to go with a better assessment model, assess the current environment what you have, and define what is the roadmap you need to have, and then take a call on the tool. So at this stage, it's not the correct way of deciding the tool directly without assessing your environment. That's what I can say. This is a question to the Anil. Hope I answered it.
Suresh, there's one more question. How to configure break glass accounts in IAM?
So for any accounts, like it comes with some a standard procedure to integrate that application. So using that, it can be um, integrated here. There is nothing like an how to configure it. And it also depends on the tool, whether that specific tool is supporting it or not. Since we are not talking about a tool level, we can't say that exactly how do you configure in that tool, but it should be achievable, should not be complex.
We have another question. Sir, if compromise occurred in cloud environment and we are cloud service customer, then what are steps we need to take to strengthen the security to avoid events in future apart from RBAC and MFA? The question is asked by Pavitra.
Compromised, yeah, I'm just reading that if compromised. So basically, I can say that it's starting at an choosing a tool. So you need to go with an once the roadmap and your requirement is finalized, right? So you have to choose a proper tool which provides a more security, which is a standard one, whether they are compliant against all these things, and whether they are playing what is a reputed companies like a Gartner, what their report is saying, which tool is preferable for such kind of requirements. Choosing a tool is very much important. Choosing a right tool, I can say that. So to ideally, when you have chosen a proper tool, it should not compromise your any of the accounts in IAM. But again, if you don't have a proper infrastructure and ecosystem, starting with your endpoint production and all those things, right? In your on-premise system or a cloud environment, easily you're opening the doors for the cyber attackers, and it can get compromise it, right? So to avoid all those things, I can say here, choosing a right tool plays a key role, and also the regular monitoring what activities the users are doing, and is there any insider attacks or any other things is happening. Continuous monitoring is very much important to avoid any such kind of incidents or activities.
I would just like to add to that that you should have cloud security posture management in place, like Suresh touched upon the appropriate tools initially. So you should have tools to detect misconfigurations, open ports, or non compliant resources, or even public data exposure. And you should remediate whatever is going wrong.
Thank you, Prachi. Thank you, Suresh. Thanks everyone for attending the webinar. Hope this was an informative session. If you have questions, do contact us. Thanks, everyone.
Beautiful. Thanks, Rakesh.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.